I recently took an impromptu trip to Wilmington, North Carolina, and it was for a really important reason. If you had told me a couple years ago that I'd be doing this, I would have said absolutely not, because I would have been terrified to do it. So let me start at the beginning for why. The weirdest synchronicity happened to me recently. Out of nowhere, a friend who just happens to be an astrologer starting a new astrocartography practice asked if I'd help her test out a travel-based activation reading. If you don't know what that is, it's essentially the astrology of place, your birth chart laid over a map of the world. Wherever your planetary lines run through, those places carry a specific energetic influence for you. Visiting them can activate or reveal something powerful. So to help her get this new offer going, I told her, give me somewhere within a certain amount of hours away. Doesn't matter what or where, just pick a place and I'll go. She came back and said, how about Wilmington, North Carolina? Your Pluto-Mercury line runs straight through it. I hadn't told her anything about Wilmington, nothing about what had happened there, nothing about how significant it already was in my life. That same day, my husband, we're separated but still close, was talking about this place called Shark's Tooth Island nearby. And we were like, that sounds so fun. We should really go. I didn't know that it was right by Wilmington. When I mentioned that I was going to go, he told me that that was the same place that we talked about earlier that day. And I just sat there because in 2020, Wilmington was the headquarters of a company that nearly destroyed me, a company that triggered the trauma that catalyzed my awakening. Now, I'll tell you, I never physically went there. I didn't have to. It was a national conglomerate, but the main headquarters and where all of the decisions were made and executed, that was in Wilmington. And now, years later, this astrologer picks it out of nowhere. That's not an accident, especially not when the planetary line running through it is Pluto, the planet of death, rebirth, and transformation, and Mercury, the voice. That company tried to take my voice. Not just metaphorically either. At the time, I didn't realize what was happening. It wasn't until later, looking back with clear eyes, that the full weight of it hit me. The patterns, the manipulation, the planted people. Yep. It was like realizing that I'd been living in a lion's den thinking that it was a team meeting. But once the truth came crashing in, it was immediate. A massive tower moment that split me open in an instant. They had effectively terrified me into silence, too afraid of retribution, while simultaneously too afraid that maybe I was wrong. Maybe I had imagined it all. So I disappeared. I turned myself into a total hermit, afraid to speak, afraid to be seen, afraid that I wouldn't be able to tell when I was in a den of lions again. So I'd just stay silent, still, unmoving, because you can't enter another trap if you don't walk forward. But even though they stole my voice for a time, I got it back. And this trip, it's a milestone. And it felt like the right time to finally reclaim my voice and my truth and to tell this story. So thank you for being a part of it and spending your valuable moments with me. I hope that you get something out of this. This is the story that ignited everything. And it's the reason that I'm here now making this video for the Fire Unleashed, whose mission is to co-create a sovereign, awakened new earth from the ashes of one built on lies, corruption, and control, with the ones who weren't born to fit into the old paradigm, but to build the new one. No matter how harrowing their experience, no matter how brutal or traumatic their awakening. Together we heal, together we rise. I'm not just making this video to tell my story, but to speak for those whose voices were stolen too, who never got to speak at all, and to give courage to those that have not yet reclaimed their voice to speak. If I can, you will. So what happened? Back in 2020, I was recruited into what looked like a business opportunity. It was positioned as a leadership development and sales training, but it was far more controlling than it appeared. They dangled success and freedom in front of me. Photos of six-figure earners, micro celebrities, promises of time freedom, retreat invites, and luxury vibes. But once I was inside, I realized that it was a system of manipulation. They used high-pressure tactics. They expected full-time labor with zero pay. They flooded you with motivational messaging, but penalized you if you stepped out of line. They called it empowerment, but it was control. I ignored the red flag when the woman who recruited me told me to keep it a secret that I would be working 1 to 2 days a month as a nurse PRN because they wanted people who were fully devoted to this opportunity. Yeah, it was that bad. But I was so desperate to not be doing what I was doing, which was working on a COVID unit in a local hospital, that I just went for it. Plus, I trusted her. Not because she'd proven to be safe, but because proximity and familiarity create the illusion of safety. And we ran in the same circles. In the interview process, they asked me something strange. They said, describe what would happen if you failed. And I answered honestly. I said, I'd be so embarrassed to say that I was going to do something and then not do it. I'd want to crawl into a hole and never come out. I wouldn't be able to face anyone. At the time, I didn't realize that this was part of a psychological tactic known as NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. It's a tool that can be used ethically in coaching, but it can also be twisted when used maliciously. NLP can implant beliefs and emotional responses that are designed to be triggered later. That's exactly what happened to me. Because when I didn't fail, but I started asking questions about their rules, their structure, their money flow, I was met with pressure, isolation. People started reaching out asking if I was planning legal action. There was a woman who had been presented to me as new, just like me. She was already successful. She owned a vineyard, which surprised me, especially since I had been told to keep my 1 to 2 days a month nursing job quiet. She was framed as a go-getter, a star mentee of the program that we were in. I was told that we'd vibe off each other, that we could push and inspire one another to move faster and go farther. And I believed it. We were introduced through the company. She mirrored me, bonded with me. She even drove several hours to meet me in person. We started weekly Zoom calls to vent about how hard things were. I trusted her, but when I started asking deeper questions, she flipped. Suddenly, she was grilling me. Are you being coached by a lawyer? Are you seeking legal action? Over and over and over again. When I finally said no, she said, good. Just be careful with these people. Then my computer's hard drive crashed, completely wiped. There was no warning, no recovery. After that, she started telling me disturbing stories, one about someone who disappeared, another about a man who had been so traumatized by his experience that he'd been institutionalized. She gave me his name and his number, but warned me that contacting him might cause him to relapse. Years later, I looked him up. He was dead. Grief hit me like a wave. They may not have killed him directly, but the trauma that they inflicted had taken its toll. He'd drunk himself into a very early grave just a year and a half after what they did to him, what they did to me. He was only in midlife. And I knew in my bones that could have been me, and it almost was. And that's when it clicked. She hadn't been new at all. She knew way too much about way too many inside stories, and to top it off, I found an old promotional video from years before we ever met in 2020, a video by the company that had been made in 2018. And there she was. Short hair, different look, but the same woman. She'd been in the company all along. She was a plant. I didn't know exactly why I was targeted, but I know what they did to me. They broke me. They exploited my time, my hope, my trust. They used psychological warfare masked as opportunity, seeding fear and doubt through strategic praise, veiled threats, and tightly controlled language. Everything felt curated, rehearsed. You were celebrated 1 minute and iced out the next if you questioned anything. And that doesn't include the overt hazing. It was all about control, address, and empowerment. And when I pushed back, they made me question my own reality. For a long time, it worked. I spiraled. I left my job. I left society. I stopped talking to everyone. I couldn't walk into a grocery store without bracing myself. I begged for death. I thought that I was broken beyond repair, but I stayed alive for my kids. But something else was happening, something bigger. This was the beginning of my greatest awakening, because once everything was stripped, my identity, my career, my confidence, what was left was a raw, empty shell. And in that emptiness, I started to see. I saw how deep manipulation runs in this world, how systems of control wear masks designed as business opportunities and community. and I began to ask the bigger questions. What's real? What's true? And who the hell am I? That was the beginning of the fire unleashed. Not the movement, not the community, the actual fire inside of me awakening, burning through the lies, burning down the old world, and preparing me for the one that I came here to help build. Today, I'm not the same woman. I've rebuilt my life from scratch. I'm no longer afraid to be seen. I have friends. I have a voice. I lead a community. I walk in truth. I go outside. I live. I thrive. I shine. I'm freer than I ever was, because when you end up in a place with nothing left to lose, you only have everything to gain, and you find the knowledge that you can survive losing everything, even yourself. So no, I didn't go to Wilmington to get closure. I already closed that chapter. I went because the land still held pieces of me, and I was ready to bring them home. This was not the first story of me facing darkness, demons, and death in my own life, but it was the start of the final round before I was activated for my destiny. It also was not the only contributing factor to the whole arc of my awakening, dark night of the soul, and my comeback. I spent my whole life being prepared for what comes next. I'd love to share more later if you're interested. Just remind me to spill the tea sometime. That experience didn't just mark my personal death and rebirth. It marked the birth of my mission. The fire they tried to extinguish in me, it became something much bigger. It became the Fire Unleashed, a space for those who've seen the truth and don't know where to go with it, a movement for those unraveling, rebuilding, and remembering all at once. The fire isn't here to fix you. It's here to witness you in your becoming. It's for the souls waking up mid-collapse, the ones asking, how do I live in this world now that I see it? Inside, we do the work that most bypass: nervous system restoration, shadow reclamation, energetic sovereignty, and true embodiment. Not for show, not for status, but because wholeness is holy. This is where integration happens. This is where new earth seeds get planted. And the people who felt out of place their whole lives, they're the exact ones who are going to build what comes next. Together, we're not just surviving awakening. We're living it fully, and we're doing it side by side. Awakening can be terrifying. It doesn't come with a manual, just a sudden jolt into clarity in a world that no longer makes sense. Like waking up from a dream, only to find out that your waking life is scary and disorienting and filled with dangers that you were unaware of while asleep. It can make you feel powerless to create any type of meaningful change in the world, especially when you start telling people what you know now. And they look at you like you're telling them that Toy Story is real and that toys really do come alive when you leave the room to create heroic feats of friendship for their little toy friends. But no matter where you are in this journey, you must know this. You and the others experiencing awakening on this planet at the same time aren't doing it to watch the world collapse and burn out. We're meant to throw our fears into the fire and watch them transmute into pure golden courage that we didn't know that we had. We are meant to end these corrupt control systems that feed on the energy of the innocent, not just by seeing them for what they really are and exposing them, but by taking back what was ours all along, our power. And that is a silent war, not fought with gear or weapons, but with our hearts, with our souls and our minds, with our attention, our actions, and our alignments. We don't need marches, megaphones, or protest signs. We don't have to debate or convince anyone who can't yet see what we see. We don't even have to lobby in Washington. We just have to build what we came here to build, right alongside the outdated world that's crashing all on its own. And that starts one awakening at a time, one heart healed at a time, one person saying, I did it, now you can do it too. That is how the fire spreads. If you feel that fire in you too, if you've been cracked open and you're trying to make sense of the pieces, if you've been silenced, manipulated, or misunderstood, but still feel something stirring inside of you, come walk with us. Inside the fire, find grounding tools, live sessions, and a space to be seen, raw and real, while you rise. Join the fire at thefire.circle.so. We're not just talking about awakening. We're rising and building what comes next together. Because like me, you were born for such a time as this. If you're feeling called to a place or like something deep is shifting in you, but you don't know why, astrocartography might hold the key. My trip to Wilmington wasn't random. It was guided by the stars, by my chart, and by the intuitive brilliance of my friend Susan. She doesn't just read maps, she helps you navigate initiations. Whether you're seeking a place of healing, transformation, or power, her astrocartography readings reveal where your soul is asking to go. And if you're brave enough to answer the call, she offers support through the process, especially when visiting activation zones like I did today. I'm leaving her info below because reclaiming your power often starts with remembering where you left it. I hope that you've enjoyed my story, and I hope to see you in the next video.